Hi, this is Renee and Kent Miller, and today we're going to be talking about the true conscious path versus that's generated by the ego and how to separate that.
Yes, separating the consciousness from the ego.
And so, there's a lot of teachers out there. There's a lot to choose from. But how do you choose the right teacher, and how do you know which one?
The teachers that we learn from, some of the teachers that we learn from are native people of this land, several tribes who still practice the ancient traditions and focus on the spiritual self.
And so in our channeled lessons, a lot of times our guides talk about the Native Americans and the indigenous peoples around the world. We get more on Native Americans because we live on this continent. If we lived in Australia, we would probably get more
from the Aborigine.
Right, we would probably be directed more toward the Aborigines people. And so this lesson started out talking about the Native Americans and the indigenous and how their role is going to be teaching those who've lost the ways in the coming trials that are coming here as we see unfolding now.
They're going to be the teachers of ancient wisdom as events unfold in the coming years, I guess you could say, and their relationship is still strong. Now, we're talking about native people who doesn't live at 7-Eleven or fast food places. We are talking about those that are still in contact with the Creator and the spiritual ways.
And their connection to the earth.
And the connections to the earth. Those are the ones who will be the teachers of the future.
And so why the connection to the earth? Because the earth provides that vibrational learning field that is dialed into our DNA, or our DNA is dialed into it. And so they're synchronized, and we must bond with the earth in order to be able to facilitate these spiritual lessons and that spiritual guidance.
Yeah, they increase or manifest in protected areas around the globe. There are many varieties of natives around this globe, not just here in the States, but their connection with the earth itself.
That affords them protection, right?
Protection, yeah.
So it's more like a vibrational protection because of their connection to the earth.
They put out a vibration like we've never heard of, and an experience that they kind of keep to themselves. They let a little bit out about what they do, but if you ever become close to native people, then you will learn more about the ways that they do things and produce the spiritual events. But to the person that just goes once a year to a native tribe, they're just going to tell what normally is seen by the public. You're not going to know much.
So our vibrational essence, which is reflected, it reflects our level of understanding, but it also reflects where our heart is and our alignment to our true spiritual path, which is all about spiritual growth and learning and our expanding consciousness. All of that is put into this vibrational symphony that we project out into the field around us. And that's going to determine a lot of things for us and pathways for us.
We have to learn how to separate the spirit from the human ego. Human ego depresses everything that we need to know. And by learning how to separate the spirit of the self, and you will contact the spirits of all that is within the earth. If the ego, any ego is there, you will not be able to contact.
So even the vibration of ego is projected out into the field around us, and it interferes with our spiritual connections and the spiritual guidance that we can get to help bring a new and more profound understanding through our thought process and through telepathic communication.
Yeah, the ancient peoples of this earth, the ancient, I'm going to call them natives around the earth, are the ones that teach and relate to the experiential learning available on this particular planet.
Mm-hmm.
And they were put here for this reason. And if we learn from them, then we are to gain the knowledge. If we just go about our own ways and make up our own words and our own ceremonies, we will not know this knowledge at all.
So part of the problem, and in this lesson, which is found in the second book in the series, The Augmentation of Man, that's the acquiescence of humanity. This lesson talks about the effect of our ego on our spiritual path and how it interferes with the true spiritual path. And how do we know if ego is getting in the way? So they talk about how we manifest. Humanity has this this unique quality of manifesting their own terminology, their own phrases,
once
that actually it's a part of the ego and egoic behavior, but it actually interferes with our spiritual progress. So as an example, and we're just bringing this up to be able to get people to understand this and not to be critical, but one of the words that are common, or the phrases that are commonly used today, is light worker. And so what is the true definition of a light worker?
Yeah, that's one who actually attaches to the communication, which is the light, and is able to obtain the communication from either higher self or the mentors.
And so it's one who brings in the light,
brings in the information,
which is the communicative understanding.
Right.
That's
so a light
delivered.
Worker is one who delivers the information. It's brought off of the light, the plasmic cord.
So the plasmic cord is what the light mentioned in ancient texts travels on, and that is what is, it's kind of like the fiber optics that we use for communication lines here on Earth. It causes the communication to travel on these plasmic cords through the atmosphere in a telepathic communication.
Yeah, now these ancients, which I get during my meditation, I understand that they do not want to speak to everyone, because when others, not all others, but when some others meditate, they put their wants in, not their needs. And that comes from the ego. And they are not into our ego. They put the value of teaching and what you want to discover more important.
Yeah, and so the ancients want to talk to those who want to be of service and to be able to generate the change that's necessary here on Earth without the ego involvement. And so it's really important to recognize when the ego is involved, and also part of that is recognizing the use of terminology that is used on an egoic level. And so that doesn't serve us as far as our expanding consciousness, because it's only expanding the ego.
Yeah, and you have to understand that the importance of the higher self. When you are able to put your ego totally aside and listen to the higher self, which is full of information and energy. It's like a computer. And when you're able to open that computer to assess the information, you'll be astounded. But if there's any wants in what you do, you won't get the true information that you're seeking.
Yeah, and that's kind of a tricky thing sometimes to try to decipher is this a want versus a need? And so our guidance always says that it's what you need, not what you want. So do you need a car or do you want a Porsche?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're just trying to, if you're trying to get from point A to point B, you just want a transportation, and you're asking for a Mustang, and you get a VW, small VW. You're saying, well, I don't want this because this is not what.
This is not what I want to project in my image.
Right.
So if we're thinking about our image and what we want to project to others out there in the world, that's your ego.
Yeah. So the egotistical vibration is projected into the field around your physical body. When you're walking someone and someone sees you, you're projecting most of the time your egotistical self, and people just look at you. They don't respond to your
what's
you
inside.
You don't put off a positive attitude. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and so we often will choose our clothing and our hairstyles and various other things that we adorn ourselves with.
You don't go your gut feeling. You go, how can I present myself to somebody else?
I want to project myself out into the world. And it doesn't really reflect the purpose of why we are here, the spiritual being, our spiritual growth, and the purpose of this lifetime that our higher self has already determined prior to our birth here on this planet. Mm-hmm. And so we have to let go of who we see in the mirror and start to connect to the ancient self, which is that marriage of consciousness where our physical self is connecting to the higher self, the ancient self. And that higher self starts to feed the physical self the stored information that it has accumulated over eons. And so when Kent does this, it's pretty interesting because in the last year, we've noticed that a lot of his channeling has come from the higher self. Mm-hmm. And it speaks differently than he speaks in this physical incarnation. It's highly intelligent and insightful. Is quite interesting because it's almost like a different person, a bigger and different representation of who you are than in this physical incarnation. And I think too, we need to look at people when we are interacting with people and understand that this physical incarnation is only a very small representation of that, the bigger part of who they really are and the stored consciousness they have within that higher self that's not being expressed in this physical incarnation. We get really hung up into how people behave in this physical incarnation. But that's what they were attuned to vibrationally coming in to learn those lessons.
The people that choose the path in which we put on a title of negative, They don't go with the true self. They don't go with what they feel in their gut. They go with whatever society says around them, and they project themselves of what society says, not who they are.
Yeah. And so we need to look within ourselves, the deeper aspect of who we are, and align to that, align to the earth, align to the creator and what the plan for creation is, which is expanding consciousness.
Yeah. When you want to gain knowledge and truth and learn, you go to the natives within your area, and you go to one and tell them you want to learn. You don't project yourselves on them. You don't force yourself on them. They will pick the time and the place in which to teach you if you're willing. But when you project yourself onto them, onto the natives, you will be rejected as somebody who just wants to stroke their own ego and not really learn the value of what is truly out there.
And so even our spiritual teachers that we have here on earth can be guided by their egoic self rather than their true higher self, and can feed into that that false spiritual path related to the ego. So it's important that we keep ourselves in check and ask ourselves those important questions as, you know, what is the root of my behavior? Why am I choosing this, or why do I desire this path?
Yeah, are you choosing it because those around you choose it and you want to be part of the group?
Or is this coming from truly within the heart and you feel that strong desire to follow the path, and it's not based in appearances or following others, but rather following your true path? And this is where you need to be. As far as spiritual teachers, I would suggest that, you do your own evaluation and ask yourself, when you're using certain terminology, is it a part of the ego, a clout, where you're using certain words to generate an air of spirituality? And does that really exist? And so do we call ourselves light workers because it's an egoic term? Or are we truly bringing in the light where we are receiving spiritual guidance and understanding that we can bring forth to other people to expand the consciousness of others without a price tag attached?
Yeah, you've got to bequeath yourself to the Creator and learn what that meaning is. You cannot hold back and say, well, I don't want to, I have a little bit of ego. I want to hold back because of my wants in this life. You cannot have any ego. You have to clear yourself at the time that you want to learn and discover. If you don't want to, then don't even try to go into deep meditation or learn,
because you won't get a higher
right,
vibrational entity
right.
to
You get
talk
low
to you.
entities that teach you,
That will feed into the
right,
ego.
how many cars do I need? Well, you need 3 cars because, that's low entities
Right.
information. So bequeathing yourself to connecting to the true information within the realm of the higher self, you have to dissolve your ego. And once you understand what the ego is, then you become enlightened to dissolving it because you understand it better.
Mm-hmm. So they kind of finish this lesson off with the behavior of one who is aligned to the higher understanding, where it's smooth. They compare a straight-bladed knife to a serrated knife. And the one who is aligned, their behavior is smooth, straight line, even keeled. The one who's not aligned, their behavior is going to be up and down like a serrated knife. It's not going to be consistent. It's not going to be smooth. They're going to show that they're not aligned to that knowledge and to the light.
Yeah, it becomes unpredictable.
Their behavior becomes unpredictable.
Yeah, so with this event that's going on right now, the coronavirus and things that are to come, if you get rid of your own ego and concentrate on your own health, eating nutritionally, and taking what you need to take nutritionally, increasing your immunity, and quit worrying, you'll probably come through this.
We would like to thank you for joining us today, and check out our website, verdiance.com. That's V as in Victor, ERDIANCE. We have some lessons that we have presented in our blog, taken from A Study in Renaissance, and that was the first edition, which didn't have a lot of translation. Now, we are getting ready to publish this. I think this week should be ready finally.
Second edition.
The second edition, we have expanded on it.
It will say second edition right here.
We have expanded our interpretations of it, done some research, scientific research as well, and made it a much more complete and understandable edition. So that should be available on Amazon this week, and we are going to offer it at a discounted price of $9.88.
Right.
And then also, we've mentioned earlier, the acquiescence of humanity. This one goes more into our history as human beings and our history with other extraterrestrial beings.
Other entities outside of Earth, and also native people of the Earth.
And it also talks about where we're going as a race and genetic changes that are coming. Yeah. And so those are two enlightening tools and very interesting information, I must say.
So we thank you for listening to this podcast, or this video.
And so
and we have also had a podcast on anchor.fm.
Yes. So, and you can join us on YouTube.
Okay.
There you go. We've got something for everybody. Thank you for joining us. And as always, peace be with you on your journey to enlightenment. Take care and have a wonderful week now. Bye-bye.